let's give you an experience. Surround you with good resources, a good mentor, probably a good leader yourself. But a lot of it you learn by doing. Now we're going to
Mm.
want to supplement that. And we certainly, as many other organizations do, like we've got some things, some classes, right, that we want you to experience as a new leader. Listen to what other people are saying, are seeing in you. So if you've got somebody tapping you on the shoulder saying, hey, I think you should think about this. Don't discount that. Listen to that. Some of the greatest opportunities I've had in my career is because.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast, where I bring you the best and the brightest in the world of business, marketing, careers, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity and drive your career forward. Folks, my guest today is Julie Sexton. Julie serves as a Senior Vice President and CHRO at Land O'Lakes, where she leads enterprise talent strategy. Known for providing innovative and agile capital human experience, Julie and her team work with business partners to identify and implement creative solutions that achieve organizational goals and develop the next gen of leaders. She has a fantastic background. We're going to dig in and get to know Julie, the business, and talk about innovation. Let's do it. Julie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Great to be here. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show here, and welcome to your first official podcast here. And hopefully you're in good hands here. And whenever I talk to senior level leaders like yourself who have been in this business a long time, I'm always curious, how did you get into it? How did you get into the people business?
How did I get into the people business? How did I get here? If I'm perfectly honest, I sort of fell into it, right? I got an undergraduate degree in business. And while I was there, it seemed like a good idea to me to get a concentration. And you could get a concentration in marketing or accounting or operations and HR just seemed like a good one that could apply no matter what I ended up doing. So I started there and then explored through a few internships, which I had some great experiences, right? And people who trusted me early on with some big important work. And I just found that I liked it. I liked the learning across the organization. People are always fascinating. So it just sort of happened. And then it's continued to be a great place to continue to grow and learn. Yeah.
And keep me straight here. I mean, 26 years at Land O'Lakes.
Yeah.
You've had a number of positions. You've been able to see lots of parts of the business. I mean, in this day and age, we don't see folks hanging around companies that long. What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, you're right. We don't see a lot of folks, right? And that's a little bit of my background that it's like, wow, how did I get here? No, so I can't say that when I started here, I thought, boy, in 26 years, this is where I'm going to be. But I would say it's been a great organization, both professionally, as you mentioned, right? Lots of opportunities to grow in an organization that's large enough to have really good opportunities, and as well as small enough that you're not an anonymous nobody, right? There was always an opportunity to have an impact. And it's been a great place personally, right? Like the community, the culture that is Land O'Lakes is just a wonderful place to be. And I have so many colleagues that I respect, that I learn from, and just the camaraderie in the community here is second to none. So it's been a good place. Yeah.
So let's hit the rewind button. This is your life, Julie, and let's go back to that first day at Land O'Lakes. And when you think about that first experience, how much of that culture, vibe, and energy has remained the same and changed in the sense of what keeps you there, if you're looking back on it? Like that first feeling when in those first couple of days.
Yeah, the first couple of days, I remember being struck by something that I just mentioned, which is, wow, like I can really have an impact here. I was coming from a great organization, a massive organization, and felt anonymous, like I had to continue to reintroduce myself to people who had already met me, right? Here, I was, it was a little bit smaller team. It was an important team. It was the industrial relations team across Land O'Lakes, which had a big impact on our frontline employees, on our labor relations, and a leader who was a guru, first of all, and was all about teaching and learning, and it was sort of immediately apparent that there was like I was going to be able to do real stuff, right?
Hmm.
I remember being struck by that, and then from there, just continuing to build those relationships with other people. Many of whom I still work with today. Like they're on my team, so there's a cohort of us that have been here. Yeah.
It's fascinating you say that. One of my earlier jobs I absolutely loved back in 2005 to 2011. I was working at Sirius XM satellite radio here in New York, and I had a tremendous leader. And I go back to my first day, and I talk about Debbie Ernst all the time. Before I even opened my laptop, Julie, on that first day, she took me around literally by the hand to
Mm-hmm.
the executive level, to all the levels, all the different floors, and introduced me to as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm.
This is Adam. He just joined our team. And not only did that open up the relationships for him, but it showed me so much about her as a leader
Yeah.
and how she wanted me to build relationships, because she knew in my day-to-day job, part of my function was getting approvals, moving things up and down the ladder from a marketing standpoint. And I look back at that lesson learned, I'm like, damn, that's something that I'm going to, implement and employ with my employees there. What are some of those early lessons that you learned that, looking back on it now, how you manage your team?
I think that you're touching on something there that's super important to me, which is just the transparency and the humanness, right? I think when you're in those entry level roles and you're looking at the leaders, right? Like to meet one of those leaders can be such a big deal. And as you grow into one of those roles, you realize that we're all human. So how to reach across, right, throughout the organization and be visible and talk to people and learn from them. I think that's been super important for me as a leader to make sure I understand and stay tapped into what's happening in the organization. But I also think that that's really motivating and engaging for employees too, right? To be heard, to have a voice with leaders. And I think our whole leadership team does that pretty well, right? Like we're here, we're roaming the building, we're in the cafeteria with everyone else as well. And I think that again, culturally is part of the gem of being part of Land O'Lakes.
Well, isn't that what culture really is? How do you define culture in an organization, specifically yours?
I think about the values, the behaviors, how we show up, how we treat each other, right? Like to me, it's culture can be this real ethereal sort of theoretic thing, but it shows up in how we are every day, right? Like I can tell you something really fancy, but if that's not how I greet you in the hall, that's not the culture, right? So I try to get practical about it, right? And we try to live it and demonstrate it as opposed to talk about it, right?
Mm.
We don't have deep dive conversations about culture. We certainly spend some time on that, but it's more importantly, it's about, all right, what are the behaviors? How do we want to show up? What are we doing as leaders, and what are we expecting of our teams?
And that certainly starts at the top. It's trickle down. And if they're not leading by example, and I'm a big believer in show versus tell. We see
Yeah.
a lot of, talk versus action in corporate America,
Hmm.
especially these days with mass layoffs, and we're going to get to technology and all that. But what do you think is one of those consistent fundamental beliefs about people and human capital that has remained consistent since when you moved into a people role?
People show up every day trying to do their best, right? They're striving to be their best. They want to be valued. They want to be respected. But I go back to the belief that I have is that people are showing up every day to do their best work. So we have a role, I have a role, and how do you make that frictionless, right? Like how can you make that easy to do?
I think that's critical, right? When the foundations are there, you're building, and technology is always going to be changing. What if you look back on
Hmm.
how people faxing in resumes and lining up outside for, right, like the evolution there. What has been your greatest? Oh, thank God
Oh
we've
my God.
come so far. Like I can't. This
Yes.
tech innovation has been such a
Yeah.
game changer for us. I mean, has it been the paper resume? Like going back to that? I said I'm not that
Well,
young. I
well,
said plenty.
well,
I still have
okay.
a box of paper resumes.
Yeah. I would say, my first job out of college, I was doing a lot of recruiting. So yeah, I remember having a drawer full of paper applications at that time, sorted by job title, and going through those things and getting, this was the thing that always just killed me, getting voicemail messages with the receptionist that were written on these little pink slips of paper. while you were out, right, with a little checkbox and what they said. And in a recruiting role like that, I would get, oh my gosh, 50 of those things a day. And oh my, it was really stressing. So I would say that, from a technology perspective, getting rid of that was great, right? So um, email, I would say email was a great innovation. I remember that. Oh my gosh, I'm really dating myself. Like being early on with that, but not being able to get the managers to use it because they didn't want to use it.
Man.
But now I would say some days email is just like, you're killing me here, right? Like now I'm back to the pink slips, but now they're electronic and they're staring me in the face on a screen. Yeah.
Now we're just managing our inbox all day long, I feel like. Right?
You can. Yeah, you can.
So let's while we're hovering around the area of tech and innovation, how does Land O'Lakes, as much as you're open to sharing, utilize the modern AI tech that's out there, either from a sourcing,
Yeah.
screening, or interviewing standpoint? What are you learning? What have you found? What have you tested and learned?
Yeah. I think a lot of it's at that point that you just said, testing and learning, right? So we certainly are striving as a team. We've got a human resources generative AI steering team, right? So somebody on my team who's on point and helping us challenge and think about that. And he's part of a larger Land O'Lakes team that's doing the same. We are really striving to learn and experiment within human resources. So using tools in our recruiting, talent acquisition to help communicate out to candidates, right? It's a great way to help us personalize and get to many more candidates in this tough labor environment. We certainly use it to try to comb through the database of resumes that we've got and find skills, right? So that can make people sort of more apparent to us. We're experimenting. We've not used it with interviews. Our team does those in-person Zoom interviews, but we're not using AI to do that. We're not using video interviews. I think that sort of personal touch is an important part of our culture. Some chatbots on our site, right? Like we're doing that, and then we'll continue to experiment more broadly across the rest of HR too. But working on it.
I think it's very refreshing to hear that take from a large enterprise organization, and you have such a mix of folks that work there, everything from manufacturing, front office, frontline, and everything.
Yep.
When we talk about remote work versus flex work, especially from a manufacturing environment, how do you balance that conversation, right? The folks that have to be there versus not have to be there. How have you been navigating that field?
Yeah, I would call it a conversation for sure, right? It feels like that's a space that continues to evolve, and we need to continue talking about it. We certainly value flexibility. We've heard from our employees that they value flexibility, and we do that, right? That's easier to do in some cases with workers that are not frontline workers with equipment in our plant and facilities. We challenged ourselves though. How do you think about that for hourly employees? And a few years ago in 2022, we piloted a flex manufacturing role in partnership with our supply chain. We got a great supply chain organization here that was a great partner. So we have introduced flex manufacturing roles in about half of our facilities. We've got 140 of those. And I think of those as a build your own schedule kind of a role.
Interesting.
So it's a role that has to be on site, right? If you're hired into a flex manufacturing role, it's 16 to 20 hours a week. You choose your schedule, right? So you are communicating with the facility when you can work. In some cases, the start time, in some cases, the shift length. But it's provided a new way for us to think about in a role that traditionally is not flexible, right? Start time, end time, be there. It's been a new way for us to think about it.
I find that fascinating too, because if we kind of pan back a little bit and we don't just think about the employee, but we think about the family. And I think if I'm guessing, that's kind of where it came from. In COVID, we were all disrupted. Work was disrupted. You had families that people working from home. And one of the things that I always talk about, Julie, is not, everyone's like remote only, remote, but you're not thinking about frontline workers. You're not thinking about manufacturing. You're thinking about white collar folks. And you're also not considering not everybody, Julie, has an ideal home situation to work from.
Mm-hmm.
And that affects performance, motivation, all those factors. So the ability to give a in plant or in office person the opportunity to have some flexibility is a massive benefit from a hiring perspective. And having that ability to give that back to them had to help with talent retention and acquisition, right?
Yeah. So So they are designated roles, right? One of our challenges is how do we make some of those full-time roles more flexible? We're
Mm.
still working on tackling that, but definitely we've seen some positive results, right? So we get 25% more applications when we post a flex role. The new hire turnover is lower, like 10% lower. We're also we got to watch this one a little bit, but we're also starting to notice where we've had this at plants for a number of years. We rolled it out in 2022. We're starting to see that our full-time turnover is lower too. Now, I can't
Mm.
completely attribute that, but that's something we're going to watch. And we do see as well that we're tapping into. You talked about this a little bit, some talent pools with those flex manufacturing roles that we wouldn't typically have noted, right? So at-home parents, right, who are looking for a role that they can fit between school hours or on certain days and have that flexibility. We've got college students. It works great for
Hmm.
college students, right? We've had some of those convert into internships and
Tremendous.
full-time roles, right? So yeah, yeah,
So let's keep going with this one too. Where have you been innovating and testing and learning as far as employee engagement? Right? Like where have you found success? And let's even take a step back. Let's talk about something that you tested that didn't work out, because not everything works out
yeah,
as much as you're open to sharing. Some idea that you thought might have been a good idea, and then the hypothesis was there, the roots were there. I think it's important for everyone to understand where the thinking comes from. Like, we had the great intention, but
yeah,
sometimes the execution didn't work out for whatever reasons. Maybe it wasn't practical once we put it into practice. Maybe
yeah,
for whatever reasons it just didn't work out.
yeah. I'm sure we've had things that we've tried that haven't worked out. We do tend to pilot things often so that we can learn about it. In this flex manufacturing, in fact, we piloted at a one plant first to try it out and then expand it. We're doing some more work right now with frontline workers where we're going to pilot some things, communication tools, for instance, just to see how they work. Does it work in our environment? They're too early to tell, but we've learned that, right, as opposed to rolling it all out, right? Like let's give it a
You
let's
got
give
to
it a
drip
try.
it out.
Yeah, yeah,
I want to talk about a program that's near, well, an initiative that's near and dear to my heart, always supporting veterans, and the Skill Bridge program that
mm,
brings veterans into civilian work. And I think that's one of the hardest transitions, right,
yeah,
from that military mindset, but they have the work ethic. These are some of the hardest working folks
yes,
out
I
there.
agree.
How are you working with veterans to help them adapt to moving into the workplace versus the battlefield
Yep, yep.
environment?
So you're mentioning SkillBridge, right? And SkillBridge is a partnership with the Department of Defense, right? It's a program that specifically is taking folks who are coming out of the military and helping them transition into civilian roles. So we've had a partnership for a number of years, and it's one of many things that we're doing. We have a vets employee resource group. We've worked with the state of Minnesota with some things as well, right? So we have a commitment to supporting vets transitioning. So with SkillBridge, what we get connected to these folks who are toward the end of their military careers, and they get the opportunity for a 6-month internship in an organization with the goal of moving that into a full-time role. And it's a way. I think it's been a great way for us as an organization to really appreciate and understand those skills. It's a way for them to start making that transition that can. I'm not a veteran myself, but have heard that can be a really difficult transition, and we get great response, right? Like, it's from an employee experience perspective, our employees are super proud of being part of this program. We've had over 70 people complete
Well,
skilled internships. I think we've hired about 30 of them. The veterans like the sense of community at Land O'Lakes, right back to some of the things that kept me here. They
core
find that
values.
core values, a sense of purpose, right? This larger purpose that they were a part of in the military, right? And Land O'Lakes has that as well as an organization back to our members. So we get really positive response. I had an employee, as a matter of fact, I was at a leadership development program we're doing internally here. And at the end of that, I had one of the participants in that program who's not a veteran. She came up and wanted to thank me for us participating in the SkillBridge program. And as she did that, she started to tear up because she has a spouse, family members who are military, and she was just conveying that the program means so much to her. And it was I'm so grateful she shared that. It was so striking to me. Yeah,
And these type of programs and doing it the right way adds to the fabric of the culture.
it does.
And you're bringing in such diverse and when we talk about diversity, and I say it all the time, diversity is not just your skin color, sexual orientation, religion, but
Right.
it's what you bring to the table from a mindset perspective. And when you bring veterans in,
Yeah.
they're bringing in leadership. They're
Yes.
bringing in leadership skills that transcend battlefield versus corporate America and lessons learned along the way.
Hmm.
Have you seen examples of folks that come in through this program rising through the ranks?
Um, we've
We're
we've
getting there.
we're getting there, right? We've been, I have to say, we've been a part of it 4 to 5 years. We've definitely got some that came in leadership roles, particularly in our plants and facilities, because it's also a good way. Like we've got our headquarters in Minneapolis. We've also got a broad, population of employees across the United States, often in some rural communities, and it's a great way for people who want to go home, right? Because a lot of military members are part of not from urban areas, right? They're from rural communities. So we've definitely got some leaders in our facilities that came through the SkillBridge program.
Hey everybody, Adam here from the Podcast. Today's podcast is brought to you by the team at Fountain. Fountain is your full-service frontline workforce management platform. I have to tell you, Fountain's offerings are some of the most robust I've seen for any product in the space. They offer full solutions for hiring, managing, and retention. They are truly a one-stop shop focused on the frontline workforce. They also create informative content using their data. For example, they analyzed a bunch of data from their fast food chains and created a trend report you could download now on their website. They also have a new ebook out called Frontline Voices. There's a lot to dive into. Certainly check it out. And you could learn more at fountain.com, linked in the show notes. Thank you. Let's talk about that a little bit, right? Land O'Lakes isn't just butter. It's a $14 billion agricultural co-op with deep roots in America. How do you tell that full story to attract the top talent in hyper competitive markets?
Yeah. I think so we are butter and yet so much more, right? So
We're not just butter.
we're not just butter, but we are butter and we're proud of that butter.
Butter's great. I make butter every day.
Yeah.
Can't live without butter. I say that, sorry.
You cannot.
We all say that.
I agree. I got lots of it myself.
I hope
Yeah,
so.
so we are a $16 billion organization.
Sorry, 16 billion. My numbers are off
That's okay.
by a couple billion.
That's okay. It's important. It's okay. We work across the whole ag value chain, right? So think about on-farm insights, crop inputs and animal nutrition products and services, consumer-facing brands, right? That's where the butter is. All the way out, we've got some global presence as well. So we work across that whole value chain. I think the other story, the other part of that's an important part of who we are is we're a cooperative. So we don't have anonymous shareholders. We are owned by farmers, dairy producers, ag retailers, right? So I think of them as the backbone of the American food system. And that gives us this unique place when we're working with our customers that we can connect back into that food value chain, all the way back to the crops that are grown, right? The animals that are raised, the milk that's produced, right? We're working across that whole space. And that's a bigger story. And I think it roots us in those values that we've talked about.
And that ties into the American journey, right? That really ties into the spirit of the company and the values for it. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about leadership, and especially cross-generational leadership. As we mentioned earlier, you've been there a long time, and we're nurturing the leaders of tomorrow, the Gen Zs. What are some of those learnings and best practices along the way? How do you nurture future leaders within the organization?
Yeah. I think of it as a combination of experience and learning and mentoring, right? So some of it is let's give you an experience, surround you with good resources, a good mentor, probably a good leader yourself, but a lot of it you learn by doing. Now we're going to want to supplement that, and we certainly, as many other organizations do, like we've got some classes, right, that we want you to experience as a new leader, and that's to sort of bolster some fundamental skills, because I do think as you advance in your career journey, you need to kind of reset how you're thinking about yourself as you move into those different levels. So that's how we focus on developing leaders. We do also have other programs, right, that we'll pull folks into if we want to fast track them a little bit more. But I think it just goes to the just good, solid, let's provide you a mentor and a coach. Let's give you some supplemental skills and kind of grow that along the way. I also think it's important for people to say, I don't want to do that. Okay, that's
It's
good,
okay. It's
right?
okay to say no to something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's okay to have a different career path. Doesn't have to
Mm,
be leading other people, right?
some
Yeah.
people are meant to be individual contributors, and not
Mhm.
everybody. And I find it problematic in a lot of organizations where they find the only way to promote somebody is into a leadership role versus advancing them in an IC role where they're stronger at.
Yeah,
And there's diminishing returns sometimes because not everybody is meant to be a people leader. What are your thoughts?
agree. I agree. Right. Yeah. And I've certainly seen examples where we've tried to make somebody a people leader and they're just not cut out for it. And I think over the years, we've gained more respect. I don't know if that's the right word necessarily.
Almost trust with your
Trust,
employees.
acceptance of people who are saying, I don't want to be a leader. I like, let me do this. And in some of our areas, we have built an individual contributor career path, right? That parallels the people leader career path
I love that.
to make that okay. And it tends to be in those areas where we need those really deep experts that have a lot of experience. So um, we're trying to do more of that. Yeah.
I'm curious. You've been around the block a bit, and we're in this world of multi generations in the same workplace. How do you personally navigate, working with different generations within such a large organization? How do you pivot from one to another?
Yeah. I think, yeah, I do think that there are, yes, generational things. Some of that's coming from life stage as opposed to generation. So I kind of
Fair.
stay a little more middle of the road on that. But we've done a couple of things, right? So we did a total rewards survey a few years back, right? Just to understand what our employees value, right? So we can sort that and understand as we're looking at our rewards package, how do we make sure what we're offering employees is valuable? And we know that there are some things that are super important for some. I'll call it generations, but
Right.
its life stage too is also driving some of that. So we tried to introduce then more flexibility into our rewards program so that people have more choice to pick what fits for them at the moment that they're at. We've also we have our Young Professionals Network has sponsored a reverse mentoring program the past
Interesting.
several years. And that's like, I think we have 200 or 300 people who participate in that. So with that, people
How
can
does that
sign
work?
up. Well, you can sign up to be either a mentor or a mentee, but it's reversed, right? So I'm in the program. I'm not the mentor, I'm the mentee, right? So I have a mentor I'm Generation X. So he's earlier in career. I'm not sure exactly which generation he technically is, but we
Something above
talk,
X.
we talk monthly, right? And we have a series of topics that we talk through. This month we were talking about change and change management and how do we think about that. But I'm the one showing up as the mentee, so I can learn from him. And that I know we have a number of our senior leaders who
I love
participate in
that
that because again, it's a good way to go back to that
perspective.
transparency and that learning and connecting across the organization. Yeah.
That's tremendous, and you have the ability to do that at Land O'Lakes because it is a larger organization. You have resources, and we're seeing a lot in smaller organizations too. And that's one of the purposes of the show is for information sharing,
Yeah.
idea sharing there too. You've seen a lot at Land O'Lakes over your time from an industry, workforce, tech perspective. What was one of those decisions? What's a decision you're most proud of? An initiative that you brought to the table? This is a little. This is all about Julie part right here.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Good. It's good to know we've done that transition. One of the things that I'm proud of that I did when I was leading our talent organization, actually kind of building our talent organization. The first time we had a talent management function, if you will. And one of the things that I led through that was building our first ever talent strategy, which was important to get us all aligned around how are we thinking about talent? What are the priorities? How does it tie back to the business? So it's a little more it was a strategy, right? So it wasn't necessarily something that was delivered to our employees, but it was an important moment in time for us to think differently and intentionally about talent. And then we've continued that, like we continue to have a talent strategy that we pull forward. Yeah.
Ho- and how, generally speaking, how do you evaluate current talent and performance, and maybe deciding someone's not performing in this role? It's not because they're not intelligent, smart, and capable, but they're not right fit for it. How does an organization evolve from not that Land O'Lakes does this from a fire fast perspective, but like how do we talk to someone and maybe retrofit them and move them into the right position? Because there's so many roles and
Yeah,
divisions and opportunities within such a
right,
large enterprise org.
right. And I think that's
What's that
important.
mindset?
Yeah, I think the mindset is let's be honest with people. Right now, that's harder for some to do than others, but we're here to help, right? But we do encourage folks to have regular one-on-ones, right? So there's no surprises. We certainly have twice a year, just we call them talent talks, right? Formal check-in periods that we expect everybody to do, focused on what's working, and importantly, where are you going, right? What are your development areas and opportunities, and what do you want to develop? And beyond that, it's all about like have a real conversation with someone, listen to the feedback that they're giving you as a leader, right? Because that's learning for you as well. But there's no good that's going to come from not sharing, and be respectful and straightforward, right? That can be a relief to people. It can be tough, right? But I think handled well and respectfully, then we can work with people on what are the options. Is it really that not this but that, right? There's other alternatives here. um, is there a passion you'd rather pursue, right? Is Land O'Lakes not the right place? But I think until you crack open that conversation, you're just sort of dancing around it, and that's no good for the person involved, not good for the team,
No.
right? So you just got to lean into some of that stuff.
All right. So I love this next one, especially when I get to talk to folks at your level here. So when you're interviewing, when someone gets you, Julie, in the process and they're interviewing for you and your team, we're going to assume that they, on paper, have the skill set, they have the experience. But when they sit down and speak to you, how do you really assess if they're going to be a value add, if they are going to be good for the role, for the organization? What is that? What are some of those patented Julie questions and conversations that you get into with candidates? There's a secret sauce here for anybody interviewing, by the way.
Oh, um, I like it if they're real, right? Like you can I fancy that I can tell pretty quickly if somebody's putting up a front, right? I like to know. I like people to talk about sort of the real nitty gritty of what did they do that they're really proud of and why, right? And then listening to what was the internal thing that it really fulfilled about them, and then what did they really what did they really struggle with? And that can be a tough one. Like who wants to go into an interview and tell you about a time that I didn't do
But they
something
almost
well?
expect that. That's like an expected interview
Yeah,
question.
well, but I think
How do
it's
you answer it?
I like the ones that are honest about it, right? You can have some good, fun conversations with it as well. But I think the people who can be revealing about it and reflect that they've built some confidence from that moment, and what did they learn about it, even more importantly, because what we're looking for is can you be self-reflect. What I'm looking for is can you be self-reflective, right? Do you understand yourself? Do you understand how you learn? Um, and do you do something different as a result?
I love that. And I think it comes down to self awareness too. Like, how could someone be open in an interview, be candid as much as possible, be confident? And one of the through lines that I've been hearing when I ask a similar question is leaders want to know, how did you figure something out? What did you contribute? And
Mhm.
how did you figure it out? Figure it out. And what's that thought process? And how did you get there? And how much credit are
Yeah,
you taking versus giving to the team? Like
yeah,
how much
yeah.
was your involvement there?
Exactly, right. And I've had interviews where I start to realize that the person's using we the whole time, and that's great. I'm glad you can work as a team, but I want to know what you contribute. I don't want you to cover yourself with everything that the team did. So it is, we're looking to hire you, not the team,
Right.
right? So yeah.
I want to bring it home here as we head toward the finish line here. What is, from a business leader perspective, what is keeping you up at night these days? What's really worrying you, internally about the industry, about hiring, economy, like what's keeping you up at night these days, Julie?
I think there's a couple things that I would say are sort of the big rocks on my mind. One is just some of the challenges in the economy, the industry, right? Like agriculture's got a lot of challenges facing it, everything from labor challenges to market volatility, right? Weather events, right? All of those things are are challenging. So how we've got growth aspirations as an organization, right? So how do we grow into that? It's a good opportunity. And then, follow on that is, so how do we equip our talent to do that as well, right? How do we make sure we've got the right talent? How do we make sure that they are equipped? How do we make sure that they understand and buy into that, right? So those things are on my mind. I think a lot about generative AI, starting with, like, how am I using it, right?
Hmm.
What am I doing differently? How am I thinking about how I work differently? Because to be credible in talking about that or leading the organization through that, I gotta understand it myself. So that's, like, I've got a sticky note on my desk in front of me that says, how can I use Copilot? I've got some sample questions that are right there in front of me so that I can just, like, if I haven't challenged myself, right? If I haven't
You,
used it yet, what can I do with it today? Yeah.
here's a pro tip: mess around.
Yep.
Literally, that's how I got into AI. That's how I got into GPT. I just mess around and I use it for so much these days to scale
Yeah.
myself and to
Yeah.
make myself more efficient. And you should even see, let's tell you offline what I do for podcast prep, even. Right.
Yeah.
How do I talk to someone like yourself and ask interesting, intriguing questions? How do
Mhm.
I input it with the right data to give me the right outputs that I'm looking for? And that only comes from messing around,
Yeah.
from
Yep.
trying it out and trying all the tools out there. So
Yep.
on the other side, we like to end with optimism here. What is that? What are those bright lights? What are those things that are exciting you about the people and talent space these days?
You know, I'm honestly, I'm really excited about the opportunities for generative AI as well, right? I think that can change the experience we can create for employees, the way people can work in ways that are more energizing and engaging. So I do think there's a lot of possibility there that we just have yet to unpack and discover. Um, I get I'm excited about the great things my team is doing. Right? I learn a lot from them. I hear great ideas every day. Some, new things that we're piloting, new tools that we're using, ideas that we're investigating, things that they're bringing to me. So I get excited about that as well, and I get the privilege of then helping give voice to that into the rest of the organization. And I think that's just a great place to be. Yeah.
Well, you're setting a great example by listening, and I think that's important for any leaders to listen and be open minded and open to ideas. Ideas could come from anywhere in an organization,
Yep. Yep.
right? They could come from anywhere within it, and I think that's really what it's all about. So let's finish up strong here, Julie. What is the single greatest piece of career advice that you've ever received that you pay forward?
The one that I use a lot is, I have a second one that just popped in my mind, but I'll
You
start
could
with
do both, please.
somebody told me at one point, everything you need is right here. And it was in the context of some improv training, honestly, that we were going through. And the point was, like, sort of a have confidence in yourself, right? Like, you're not going to be faced with something that you can't tackle. And for somebody who can do,
Right.
like, I can do an amazing monologue of self-talk with myself all the time, right? So that simple phrase, like, everything you need is right here, is just really affirming and, like, forward leaning, right? Like, okay, here we go. So that's one that I tell others as well. Early in career, just starting, you're an intern, you're further on, everything you need is right here.
But I also build on that a little bit, and I kind of caution too, and not to be a pessimist, but what got you here won't get you there. I kind of like build on
That's
that too.
true.
Like you
Yes.
have those pieces here to build upon. All right, what's the second one? We're going for the bonus one.
The second one is, listen to what other people are seeing in you, right? So if you've got somebody tapping you on the shoulder saying, hey, I think you should think about this, don't discount that. Listen to that. Some of the greatest opportunities I've had in my career is because somebody else saw something in me that I wasn't able to, couldn't,
Of
didn't want,
course.
whatever the reason was. So that's the other thing is, to your point about listening, right? If somebody else is seeing something in you, then listen to that. Yep.
I love that so much too. And it kind of goes back to one of my favorite mentors, friends, coworkers, colleagues, Claude Silver, Chief Heart Officer over at VaynerMedia here in New York, when she talks about feedback. And she says feedback is a gift and to
Hmm.
take it at that. Because if someone is offering you their feedback, it means that they care and
Yeah.
you should listen. And they're not doing it in a malicious way and doing it the right way and just cherishing feedback along the way. So I want to thank you, Julie, so much for joining us today. I want to applaud you and the organization, Land O'Lakes, for decades leading the way, leading by example. Fantastic organization. Anybody who wants to connect with Julie, they could reach out on LinkedIn. You know where to find butter. You know where to find the best products out there. I want everyone to connect with Julie. You know where to find them more. Land O'Lakes, connect with Julie on LinkedIn. Julie, thank you so much for hanging with me today. If you guys found, let's put some music on. We got a little music. Here we go. We got a little music to end the show over here. Everyone listening, if this show meant something to you, please leave a review rating. It goes a long way. You know where to find out more. Head over to thepodcast.com. Follow us on all the social media channels. Remember, be good to yourself, be better to others, and catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast. Take care, everybody.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search the podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.